Hi everybody, I'm Pia from Stitches and Scraps, and today I want to show you how to make this cute little baby bootie. We're going to start from the toe, which starts with just a regular circle right in the middle. So that circle is 6 single crochet. Let's do that. We start by chaining 2, and then we work 6 single crochet into the second chain from the hook. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now we're going to be working in continuous rounds, so we want to mark the first stitch of each round. I am going to use a running stitch marker, which just an extra piece of this green thread. I'm not even removing it from the skein because I have limited quantity, so I'm just going to pull off an end and use that for a little while until I need it, and then I'll pull it out. Okay, there we go. And let's pull out a little more. There we go. All right, so my marker's in place. Let's start round 2. For round 2, we're going to be working 2 single crochet into each stitch around. So we started with 6, we're going to end round 2 with 12 stitches. 1, 2, and notice I didn't start with a chain because we're doing continuous rounds, so there's no reason to chain up. It's going to end up being a spiral. Okay, that's 12 stitches. Now here's where it starts to get different. So far we've just been making our typical circle, right? Increasing 6 stitches every round. But we don't want it to stay a flat circle. We want to turn it into a cone. So now what we're going to do is increase only 4 stitches instead of 6 stitches. And that's going to take us from 12 up to 16. So let's make sure we have 12. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So now we're going to turn that into 16. We're going to do 2 single crochet into the first stitch, and then 1 into each of the next 2 stitches. And that makes 4. 2, 3, 4. So now let's do 4 more. 2 single crochet into the next stitch, and 1 into each of the next 2 stitches. So now we're up to 8. 2 in the next stitch, and 1 in each of the next 2 stitches. Now we're up to 12. And finally 2 in the next stitch, 1 in each of the next 2 stitches, and that gets us up to 16, which is where we want it to be. Flip our marker back over. And now we're going to do that again. We're going to increase by 4 stitches, which is going to get us up to 20. So 2 in the first stitch, and then 1 in each of the next 3 stitches. Now we're doing groups of 5. So 2, 3, 4, 5, and now 2 in the next stitch. And you can see our circle starting to curl, right? Because we're not quite making enough stitches to make it a circle. So 3, 4, 5. Now we're up to 10 stitches. 2 in the next stitch, and then 1 in each of the next 3 stitches makes 15. And 2 in the next stitch, and 1 in the last 3 stitches gives us 20. So now we have 20 stitches for our toe, and that is this flat portion of the toe here before we start the ridges. Okay, now we're going to start the ridges. And technically this part is easy enough to count without using a marker. If you still feel like using the marker, you can, but you don't have to. I'm going to rip this out and I'm going to do it without the marker so that you can see how I count the rounds in this section once I don't have a marker anymore. So now I'm just going to be working 1 stitch in every stitch. I'm just working 20 stitches all the way around, but I'm going to be working into the back loop only. So this is the front loop, this is the back loop. I'm working into the back loops only, and I'm going to do 20 stitches. Now you'll see this stitch right here. Do you see this one, the very first one that has a little line next to it? That is our first stitch of this round, okay? The stitch worked into that is our first stitch, so that's the leftover front loop from the round before it. So that's what makes it easy to count, because this is our first round and this is the first stitch of our first round. So I don't need a marker to tell me that. I can start from here and know that I've done one round. Okay? So let's see, where was I? I lost track. Let's find our first stitch. That's this one. So I've got 1, 2, 3. And I just keep going around and I should end up with 20 stitches by the end of the round. I finished 20 stitches and I know I'm in the right place because I can see that first line from our first stitch. So I can see that this one right here is our first stitch. And that's the very next stitch I have to work into. So I know I've made it all the way around the round. And I'm going to do that for a total of 5 rounds. So that was one round. And then I'm going to keep going around until I have 5 rounds. I've just finished 5 rounds and I know I'm in the right place because with these ridges it's easy to count. This is our first stitch right here, this ridge. The stitch worked into this ridge here is our first stitch. So this is stitch number 1 of round number 1. Now the top of that stitch is here, so the stitch worked into that is this one. That's the first stitch of round 2. The stitch worked into that is right here because that's the ridge, right? So this stitch is the first stitch of round 3. This stitch right here is the first stitch of round 4. And this stitch right here is the first stitch of round 5. Well, this is the very next stitch I would be working into if I worked another stitch, which means I've just finished round 5. So that's why I say if you're comfortable with counting like that, you don't necessarily need a marker because we have these ridges. But if it's easier for you, you're welcome to use a marker too. Okay, so now we're done with the purple section. We're going to finish this off by changing to green in a slip stitch. So I've already cut my purple yarn. I'm just shoving it inside the toe for now to keep it out of my way. Go inside the toe. There we go. All right, so I'm going to pick up my green yarn. And just like any time we switch colors in the very last step of our stitch. But a slip stitch just has one step. So basically we're slip stitching with the new color. So there we go. Okay, now I have changed colors and I'm ready to start the green section of the bootie. This green section is worked back and forth in rows across most of the foot here. We don't actually work across these front stitches until we're all done and then we're doing an edging round. So we're going to start here and work around the foot like that, back and forth. So now we're working, instead of in continuous rounds, we're working in rows. For the first round of green, I'm going to be working in the back loops only of these stitches, because I want one more ridge of purple and it gives it a nice definition between the two sections. But that's just for this first row only. Now I also want to create kind of an angled transition here between the top of the foot and the side. And I'm going to do that with decreases. The easiest and least bulky way to do a decrease at the beginning of this round of single crochet is to just skip the first stitch. So I chained 1 and I'm skipping this first stitch, okay? This is the first stitch that I would normally be working into, but I'm going to skip it. And I'm just going to go into the next stitch. So now I'm going to do a total of 14 stitches. Okay, I've done 13. My 14th stitch is also going to be a decrease. So you can do a single crochet 2 together. And remember, we're working in the back loops. So you can do pull up a loop in one stitch and pull up a loop in the next stitch, just like you would for a single crochet 2 together, but just in the back loops. And do your single crochet 2 together. Now that leaves us 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, that we have not worked into. This extra little bit here, that was the slip stitch from the color change, so don't worry about that. We have 4 stitches that we have not yet worked into, and we have 14 stitches going around the sides. So now we're just going to work 14 stitches across, just regular through both loops, and we're turning now because we're working in rows. So I'm just going back and forth doing 14 stitches across until I get to the very last row of the green section. I've done 10 rows of the green section, and now I'm going to do the last row, and in this row right in the middle I'm going to do a couple decreases, and what that's going to do is curve the back of this heel a little bit so it cradles the foot and isn't quite so pointy. So let's get to the middle. We're going to do 5 single crochet first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now I'm going to do 2 decreases over the next 4 stitches. Now I'm going to use a decrease here that isn't actually in the pattern. This is my favorite way of doing a decrease. It's an alternate to the single crochet 2 together. If you don't want to do this, do the single crochet 2 together, that's fine too, but I prefer this one because it's a little less bulky. I'm going to insert my hook into the front loop of this stitch, and then without doing anything else, insert it into the front loop of the next stitch. And draw up my loop through both of those front loops there. It's a little bit tight, but there we go. And now I just finish a single crochet. So I've decreased, but it's a little bit less bulky than a traditional single crochet 2 together. So let's see that again. Through both front loops. Oops, there we go. Both front loops, yarn over, pull through, and then finish my single crochet. So there's my decreases, and now I should have 5 stitches left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so now when we pull this together at the back, you can see a slight curve to the back of the heel, and that's just going to cradle it a little bit. But we're not going to finish the heel yet. We're first going to put an edging on. We're already on the right side, so we're just going to rotate a little bit and start working across the edges of these rows. I want to get a total of 20 stitches by the time I'm done. It's going to be 8 stitches across this green section, these 4 stitches that we missed here, and then 8 stitches across this green section. So that'll be a total of 20 stitches. So let's do that. And I chain 1 just to kind of turn around the corner. Let's go 1, 2, 3, let's skip this space, go 4, 5, let's skip that one, 6, 7, 8. So I kind of just evenly spaced 8 stitches across the edge there. Okay, now I can go into these 4. So and I'm going into the back loop only when I go across the toe, because remember I want this final ridge here, right? So back loop only across the toe. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now I'm going to do 8 coming up the other side here. So let's start in here. 1, 2, 3, skip that spot, 4, 5, skip a spot, 6, 7, and 8 right here. Okay, and then I can do a chain 1 again just to round off that corner and join it with a slip stitch into this stitch. Now I'm going to cut my tail, but I'm going to leave a little bit extra because I want to sew the back up. So I'm going to cut it and fasten off, and then grab a needle. Okay. Now I'm going to turn just the heel. I don't have to turn the whole sock inside, or I mean the whole bootie inside out. I can just turn the heel inside out. You can turn the whole thing inside out if it's easier for you, but really you just want the right sides of the heel facing. So I'm folding it in half with the right sides of the heel facing. Okay, and I want to line up my stitches and make sure that I have the right number of stitches. In our last row, we had the 2 decreases and then 5 stitches on each side, right? So there's my 2 decreases. There's 1 pair, 2 pairs, 3 pairs, 4 pairs, 5 pairs, and then here's that chain 1 that we did, and I'm going to go ahead and seam that as well. Okay, so I'm going to seam using a slip stitch through the, or not slip stitch, a whip stitch through the wrong side loops only. And what I mean by that is this is the front side of the fabric, right? This is the right side of the fabric. So I'm going to use the loop that is closest to the wrong side of the fabric on both of these pieces. On this side, that's going to be the front loop because I've got the wrong side facing me, right? On this side, it's going to be the back loop because I've got the wrong side facing away from me. So you want to go through the loop that is on the wrong side of the fabric. So let's move this little slip stitch out of our way so we can see that first chain space there, and go through the wrong side loop of that chain. Okay, there we go, wrong side loops of the chain, and just pull through. Now I've come out the back here, so I'm going to go back from the front. Okay, let me make sure I've got these lined up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these are the loops I want here. Wrong side, wrong side. There we go. Wrong side, wrong side. Okay. And again, wrong side loop here. See the right side loop buried inside there? Here's the wrong side loop and the wrong side loop. And wrong side loop, wrong side loop. And I just do that all the way down. And I probably left myself more of a tail than I needed, but it's better to have more than to have less. This last one's a little finicky because they're so close to each other, but just get those 2 outside loops there. And now you can weave in this end. So let's turn our heel back the right way and you can see what we've done. I'm tucking all my ends in for now. Okay, so you can see here that we've left the right side loops exposed, and that gives us that nice ridge, and then these are the whip stitches that we did in between. So we get kind of a nice little decorative heel at the back. And here is that curve, right here is that curve from the decreases we did. So that's the green section. Now we're ready to move on to the ribbing at the top. For the top ribbing, I'm going to join my pink right after the edging in this first stitch here. And I'm going to do half double crochets all the way around. So I like to start my half double crochets with a chain 1. So I'm going to chain 1 and work a half double crochet into this stitch. Some people start them with a chain 2. That's fine also. It's really personal choice. So there's chain 1 and half double crochet into the first stitch. Now I work half double crochets all the way around. And again, I should have 20 stitches, so I can count and make sure I have 20. I finished 20 stitches, and as you can see that there's still a little gap, and that's because I'm not putting a stitch into this seam. I want to make sure I have an even number of stitches, and this will also help it cinch in a little bit. Ribbing tends to flare out, so skipping a stitch in the back will help us keep a more even tension. So let's finish this round. I'm going to slip stitch into that first stitch that I made, because now I'm not working in continuous rounds. Now I'm working in joined rounds, okay? So I've slip stitched, and you can see how we've kind of cinched that together in the back. So now I'm going to do ribbing, which is front post and back post double crochet. So my first stitch, I'm going to just chain 2 and count that as my first back post double crochet. So in the next stitch, I want to do a front post double crochet. And then a back post double crochet. And then a front post double crochet. And I keep going around like that, alternating between back and front post double crochets. Okay, I finished my last stitch, and because I have an even number of stitches, I started with this chain 2 that counts as a back post, and I finished with a front post. So that's perfect. Now I got to find my chain 2 and go into that second chain and do a slip stitch to join that round. And there is my first round of ribbing. So now I'm going to start the next round. And again, it's the same thing, chain 2, and now everywhere I have a front post, I'm going to do a front post. And everywhere I have a back post, I'm going to do another back post. And I just keep going around like that to put in one more round of ribbing. And there we are, I finished round 2. Again, I need to find, and this tends to get hidden, you guys, so pull it out. I need to find my starting chain 2. There's the first chain, there's the second chain, and I slip stitch into the second chain. And that's it, my ribbing is done. So I'm going to fasten off my pink. And because I'm lazy about waving in ends, I'm going to just shove it into the bootie for now. Let me zoom out and we can see the whole finished bootie. So that's how you make this little bootie. And I stuffed it with a little bit of fiberfill so you could see what it looks like when it's actually on a foot. So that's what it looks like when it's actually on a foot. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, share it with your friends, or leave me a comment. You can also subscribe to my channel for more great tutorials and projects. Thanks for watching.